seconds. It's almost there. Maybe. Yeah, this is a longer one today. We are here making of a marketer here on a Wednesday. Jess, it is a wonderful day indeed to bring back the podcast. We're bringing back our Bosses series for today. So this was one we introduced about a month ago. We're here with one of my former colleagues, but we have to take a stop and a break there first because, Jess, I need give me a minute, 2-minute takeaway, Disney trip, correct, over the last week and a half. Like, how did it go? What did you learn? Like tell us, like, how did that progress now into your third, fourth Disney excursion now?
Yes, Disney downloaded. Andy, I laugh every time when I think about a few months ago, talking about, like, why are they sending me ads after I booked our first trip? And you were like, well, this is how the marketing works, and it's very effective. And yeah, I got duped. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah, so this was our third trip, our last trip of the year. We surprised the girls and went for a 2-day excursion. So this was a little experiment, and it was really wonderful. And it was busy. So I'm learning that you really cannot game the system. It's very crowded. We went on Sunday and Monday, and Monday, kids, like, I guess they do a Disney ditch where they ditch class and they're at the park. But it was really fun to be there for Halloween. This was not a maximizing on rides. The biggest things that we needed to accomplish were to see the decorations, which was just a blast, and meet Jack Skellington. And that was our longest wait, over an hour, to meet Mr. Skellington, and the girls loved it. And then go on the Haunted Mansion ride, which had a Nightmare Before Christmas overlay. So we had a rope drop that ride, and we did, and it was fantastic. I guess my biggest learning, if there's any type of gaming of the system, when you have older people in your party, older children, older adults in your party, I think the best way to do it is to go when it's a rope drop. So go when the park first opens, stay there for 2 hours, and try to maximize your ride time, because that's usually when the park is least busy. Leave at 10 a.m., then spend the day and afternoon like at a pool or just off property, and then go back after 8 and stay until park close.
Yeah, but lunchtime is peak at those places. So
yes.
If you can avoid lunchtime, you're good.
Yes. So we were there again because we were only there for 2 days. We maximized our time at the park, but then during the day, wow, that was really intense and super busy.
So we'll pick back up on this, Jess, because I have some thoughts, so I'm going to derail the conversation completely. And if I'm a marketer right now, so I'm hearing this, like, everyone, are we listening to devices? Are we listening to Just Talk right now about special offers? You know what I'm thinking? I'm Disney person on the algorithm, and I'm like, I'm sending her an invite for a 4 or 5 day stay at Disney World. And we're going to have this family graduate to the next level of Disney. But I'm going to continue on with that, Jess, because I've got some marketing ideas for you and how we can get your family out there for your next visit in Florida.
Yeah, to be continued. I'm not convinced right now with the girls' ages, but I should never say never, because look what I said, never. Yeah. And here I am, 3 visits in for a year.
But we do have some important discussion today, and it revolves around the world of marketing, radio, podcast, and maybe another look back into my history. We have Brandon Strange joining us on the podcast. He is my former boss and the person responsible for getting me into the world of social media. So everything you hear today, you can thank Brandon for in all of the best ways. He has an extensive history at Gow Media, where we worked together, where he was vice president digital media, now working at OptiScience as marketing video producer, and someone who is just a master in the radio podcast. And he wouldn't call himself marketer, but I will say marketing world. So Brandon, super excited to have you on today and banter about 2014 up into the present day.
Hey, thanks for having me. Look, I was telling you before we jumped on, I feel like this is like the modern day way for friends to catch up, is we just have one another on our podcast, and that's how we get to talk, because otherwise we don't.
Yes. We're going to change that, though. So
I
we
know.
already made some plans before the podcast about how we're meeting up again. So we're going to change that.
Yes, we are. We are going to do that. And Jess, it's really good to meet you as well.
That's you as well.
So let's start off with this, Brandon. Season 3 of the podcast we're on now. The whole concept that we worked up together is selling ideas, because in a world where everyone's a little bit afraid of being the next brand or next idea that can get you in a little bit of trouble or be a little unorthodox, it's hard sometimes to sell ideas through, especially when people are used to kind of just going through the usual business strategy. So tell us your method to your madness, selling anything through, unorthodox, new, different. Like, do you have some sort of go-to method that's been successful in your career?
I definitely will acknowledge the madness part of it. I think, the way that I sell a unorthodox or kind of oddball concept is probably the same way that I sell any concept, which is I try to understand who I'm pitching to, and try to think to what motivates them. Is it analytical? Is it monetary? Is it political? Is it egocentric? Do they need to have their ego stroked through the process? And I try to think about like how to navigate what those sensibilities are, and especially around the stakeholders. And I feel like if you don't know what that is, then you've got bigger problems. Like you've got bigger problems than just selling a thing. You need to understand like what that dynamic is. In fact, I dare say that if you don't know how to navigate the politics involved in the decision making, then it's probably the worst time to pitch a quirky idea or something that's outside the box. You really have to have your hands around what the dynamics are of the decision makers involved, and then worry about venturing into the more unorthodox ideas.
Ooh, I absolutely love this. This is a fresh take from our other guests, and I want you to tell me a little bit more about the ego piece, because I do think ego plays a big role in this process. So how do you check someone's ego?
I think, again, it's about understanding like who they are and what motivates them. But I think making them feel a part of the plan is a very good way to check the ego, because ego shows up in ways that maybe we don't see, like, or think about, like being defensive about ideas. And a lot of that is just being afraid of concepts that they don't understand, or maybe because they didn't think of it, they feel like they're not going to get credit for participating in it. Mm-hmm. And so making them feel comfortable with a cooperative or an environment in which everyone's collaborating together, I think feeling like you are valuing what they bring to the table and making them feel like they helped come up with the idea. Because at the end of the day, you're just trying to execute the idea. It doesn't really matter like how it gets done. Like, you just need it to get done. So if you have to hold someone's hand more than the other, then like that's just what it takes.
So I'll segue this perfectly, Brandon, because let's talk about unorthodox ideas. And you and I come from a radio background where radio for decades has done a very certain way. And I think both you and I went through the eras of the Pandoras, the podcast takeovers, the music, the talk radio, like the transformation, Spotify's, like everything just changing our game. And we were, in this digital department where we were trying to change different thought processes and really, I would say, be an expansion of the storytelling that's seen on radio. So I want to just kind of go through that with you. Tell us, the audience that's hearing you for the first time, your journey into the world of the Houston radio, building a podcast network, everything, anything in between. How has this all come together for you to where you're at now?
I started, well, I guess I'll start as a listener. I was a listener to a small independent upstart AM sports station in Houston. At the time, I was going to school. I was in college and was driving limos, because I wanted the flexibility to be able to go to class and whatnot. So I was driving limousines, which that tells you how like ancient that is, because I don't even know if that exists anymore with now, Uber Black and things like that. But yeah, I was driving limo, so a lot of time in a car, a lot of time listening to radio, and became a big fan of this independent upstart sports station. And they were just doing things that I'd never heard before. The hosts were staying past their shows to do other people's shows, and it just sounds so collaborative. It sounded like they were having so much fun. And so I won a call-in contest, one of those, they ask a trivia question, you call in. And so I won one of those, and I went to go pick up my gift card at the radio station, and I walked in, and I just remember being blown away. I just decided I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get into this business right here. This is exactly what I want to do. I had been kind of a hobbyist musician at the time, where I was writing and recording songs just, as a hobby. So I knew a lot of the software they were using just because of my own hobbies. And so I was like, I can do this. I know how to do this. And so it just lit a fire underneath me. My girlfriend at the time thought I was crazy. My mom thought I was crazy. My friends didn't really quite understand it. They just were like, well, what are you doing? I turned it into an internship. I started interning in August of 2008. Became a part-time local producer, then a full-time network producer. Got recruited to help out on the digital side, ended up taking over the digital side as the digital director, then stepped into my boss's role as VP. And then, yeah, it went fast. It was really crazy. I bet on it being, because it was an upstart when I first started, I bet on it being the ground floor of something special. And I just happened to bet right. I got lucky, in that regard. And from the other standpoint, I think I was someone who was enthusiastic enough, curious enough, and driven enough to take advantage of some of the opportunities that were in front of me. And I also, because I had pivoted careers, so I knew what I didn't want to do anymore. I didn't want to do retail. I didn't want to be in corporate America. I wanted to do this thing that I had stumbled upon in media.
Oh, I love this origin story. And just to confirm, limos are still around. Okay. There is a market for school dances, proms. There's a nostalgia piece that is still there. I do love seeing limos still driving around. It's a lot of fun. Tell me more about where you think podcasting is going, because it seems like right now we're reaching critical mass and everyone is getting involved in podcasting.
Yes, I agree with that. I don't know if I know where it's going per se. I think what tends to happen in media and just in platforms in general is something gets so saturated that it can't grow anymore, and so it gets replaced by something else. And so my thought is that eventually that's what will happen to podcasts. It will become so saturated. There will be so much competition there. There'll just be too much. And then the next thing will and that goes back just to every platform that we've ever seen take dominance, which is at some point they all go over the hill and trend the other way. And, whether it was MySpace or Facebook or whatever the case, it's everything always has its peak, and then it starts falling off. And so, yeah, you bring up a great point, and it's something that we think about all the time as content creators, as people who are in marketing. I don't like to say that I'm in marketing just because, like, to me, like, I hear marketing and I associate it with some of the more administrative, sterile kind of things, whereas, like, it's not as much, like, I don't know, like, I like the more creative side of it, like the things that challenge, and the things that make me interested in it are the storytelling aspects of it. And I think that's true whether you're creating podcasts, whether you're creating good copy for marketing, or whether you're doing whatever. I think there's always, it's the storytelling aspect and the why. It's always getting to the why of the matter is the more interesting part to me.
So when it comes to storytelling, Brandon, that's where I think we really started to come together. So I'll paint the picture for the listeners. I'm a producer on the Yahoo Sports Network, so I'm on the network side. You and I have met already. I'm doing morning shows. Like, I straight up was producing this morning show. I'd wake up 3:45 every morning. I never want to do that again in my life. I'm not a morning person. I think Brandon knows this. I'd start later if I could every day. So he comes in, I think it's like towards the end of my shift when people are eating lunch, like I'm ready to be like done for the day. And he mentions running the Facebook page because we just need help there. Facebook, it's 2013, 2014, this thing's starting to grow. We're not doing boosted media. It's all storytelling. It's all, at that time, if you did it right, you could go from 1,000 followers to 20,000 followers and not really be spending a whole lot of money doing it. No money doing it. It's just time and effort. So he comes over, asks me to see if I can help out with the page. I was like, heck yes. I was like, let's do it. Like, I think I was super excited. And I think, Brandon, you were even a little surprised how excited I was. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of tired of this producing stuff. I want to tell some stories and like do some social media. And I was always interested in that when I was a radio host prior, but I don't think I had ever done it in an organized manner. And I would say that's kind of like the butterfly effect of how it all started. I think we grew from one thing to another to another. So I'm always very thankful of you, Brandon, for seeing that in me, that there was a possibility there. But I also think that as I think about this through right now in 2014, now up to like 2025, like that's the way that I think any of us get involved in things. Like for me, it was social media. For you, it was, wanting to be in radio. For both of us, it was trying to help build a podcast platform from scratch where I was just fascinated learning about it. But none of us fully knew what we were doing. And I think there was something special about that relationship that we were able to build doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's so funny is thinking back on it, like it all happened so quickly that it was really hard to take account of it while it was happening because we were just reacting in the moment. And I also say thank you for doing all that free work because you did step up and say that. Yeah, like because, like you said, like there wasn't any additional paid to like we didn't even think about social media in the same way we think about it today. Like today,
yeah, it wasn't a paid role.
No, it's like today, like we think about it as this really like robust and effective marketing tool. But back then, like there wasn't really even a thought to social media as a real useful tool because people just didn't understand it, especially in legacy media. Like, well, we got the radio station. That's what the radio station's for, is to promote things. And you don't realize, they didn't realize just how powerful it was. And like you said, we were growing by the thousands every week. Just like our page was just like insane. And also I think what was really interesting too, viewing it from my standpoint was, I approached you because I had heard from others that you were interested in it. Like they said, hey, Andy's got this interest in doing this. He's a really good producer. He's got some good ideas. If you wanted to give him a shot, you should do it. And I'm like, okay. And so like, I knew you peripherally, like we had some overlap over things, but I never really worked directly with you.
Little Astros baseball here and there, but not podcast or not social.
No, nothing really conceptual or anything like that. It was always just, water cooler talk. And so going over, I saw your enthusiasm, and I just think that's what it takes. to get opportunities or make the most out of opportunities is just to show that enthusiasm. You were so willing to jump in. You weren't afraid to just try things. And we were getting like this kind of, I don't know, like kind of a just this invigoration from the results. Like we were seeing like real-time results, because radio is this thing where it's like, it's measured by these weird black magic kind of cryptic measuring system where it's like average quarterly hour where someone listens for 5 minutes, you get credit for 15. And what's market share, like you get a share of this many people listening, so you got a 0.1, like what does that mean? It's like, it's all these things where you have to wait for a month for the book to come out. We were sitting there doing stuff where it was like we were seeing instant results. We were seeing instant patronage, instant growth, and just really growing at a scale that where we weren't even really comparing ourselves to other radio stations, or at least other sports stations. We were looking at big FM stations and saying, we want to be that big.
Yeah.
What I love about this is Brandon, you gave Andy his shot. You took a chance. And it sounds like, based on your origin story, walking into that radio station, being blown away, new interest peak, someone gave you a chance to pursue that internship. So I love this idea of story, paying it forward to allow someone's story and path to move forward.
That's a really great point. And I think that's honestly, like, I always attribute it back to that whenever I talk about working with other people. And, when Andy, says things like this, like, wow, you gave me my shot. I would say I gave him a shot. His enthusiasm is what really earned him his spot to stay. Like, I've given, a lot of people shots, but, some just didn't stick. When I got my shot, I tried to make it last. I tried to make it count. So when our program director, when our program director was doing his independent musical, I raised my hand and said, I'll help. When our production director was doing recap shows at the end of the day that would air after hours, I raised my hand and said, I'll help. And then when they needed help on the digital side, I was in the same spot Andy was, where, they came to me. I was working radio. They came to me and said, we need help on digital. Would you be interested? And yes, I would. Because it just started with, do you have any ideas? And I said, how long do you have? And so we walked through it, and they're like, we want you to work over here. So yes, everything, there's certainly a paying it forward element, not just because I feel gratitude for those that have done it for me, because I do. I feel a lot of gratitude, and I tell them a lot too. Like the guys who are my mentors, I try to express to them my gratitude constantly because of how important I feel it is. But it's not just from a gracious standpoint, but it's also from a selfish standpoint, where I go, there are other Brandons out there that are ready to just jump on an opportunity. There are other Andys out there that are ready to jump on an opportunity, and all they need is a shot. You just have to give them to them and get out of their way. And that was what I tried to do with Andy, was giving him a shot and then get out of his way. Like, show me what you can do. I don't want to see what I can do. I know what I can do. What can you do? And he just took that opportunity and ran with it.
I love it, because Brandon, that's so much of what I needed. Like, at this point, where am I at my career? I'm 3, 4, 5 years in. So this is still, I know there's a lot of marketers out there, because I see a lot of them posted on LinkedIn. They want it to happen a little bit quicker than it's happening. They want to make money a little bit quicker than it's happening. But those 4 or 5 years, those are years where it's a lot of trying things, failing, learning, figuring out what type of leaders you want to work with. And this was the first time I had ever really been engaged like that. Another time I really think about with you and how I dictate meetings now, hold meetings, be a part of larger discussions. So I remember we used to do our weekly check-ins with different departments, and you would send me alone, and I was like, oh crap, Like, I never done this before, but right now Andy's going to give the updates today. And that was huge for me. Like, that seems like such a small thing, but that is a skill that actually propelled me considerably in marketing later on, because I had gotten a lot of reps in with sometimes very tough hosts, like that wanted to hear certain things and not get delivered certain news. So
Yeah.
that part was extremely beneficial. Other thing that I like to laugh at now, we can't have a discussion about Facebook, radio without bringing it up. So many unhinged stuff that we did back then. So like people talk about like, what is it today? An American Eagle campaign or Cracker Barrel's logo, like high profile stuff. But Brandon, 2014, everyone was doing crazy stuff on Facebook. Like we were doing Facebook Live eating contests. We were doing pranks where we had Carlos Correa and said that he was dating Kylie. I know it's Kendall Jenner.
Right.
Like we put the TMZ border around the picture. There's so many things. Like I look back now, like I'm like, man, like how everything's scrutinized in the world of social media these days. We never got a phone call from anybody is kind of amazing, but I always appreciate that because we had some fun with it. And we ended up getting a follower base that knew that's what we were.
Yeah.
Like you could go to the other stations for serious news talk and sports talk, which we had, but we brought kind of a pop culture flair to it. We brought some humor to it. You didn't know what we were going to do today to it. And I think that was a lot of fun. It also was really the first time I leaned into developing brand voice or extending brand voice, because I think a thing you talk about listening is we had a lot more playful hosts on our local Houston station. There was times where some of these shows, they didn't talk about sports for 40 minutes. So I was like, we need to mimic that on social. And I think we did a really good job of that.
Yeah, it's so funny 'cause you talked. You said unhinged, unhinged social media. And I think what's interesting and maybe even a little sad is that unhinged social media now means something very different than what it meant back in those days. Because back then, when we were really in it and moving and doing things, you're talking about the time of OG Twitter, Vine, Facebook. It was a fertile ground for creative content creators that were having fun, and there wasn't this rage baiting or engagement farming by bots and things like that for the sake of monetization. It was genuine community building. You talk about brand voice. There were so many other stations that were posting things that would say like, so and so interviews so and so, or so and so joins the so and so show.
Yeah.
Who cares? Like who cares? Yeah, like why would I want to listen to that? And so that like shaped how we positioned content, and that seems like a very easy, obvious concept nowadays.
And it prompted a response from Iggy Azalea. We put something out a little controversial from our shows that got Iggy's attention.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times we would get engagement like that. I remember, I want to say it was Antonio Brown. That was I was producing a show with one of our hosts, and he tweeted at Antonio Brown and was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm in the barber chair." And he's like, "Well, we're hosting a radio show. You should call in." And the phone lights up, and it's Antonio Brown. It was just insane. Awesome. Like there was just so many things like that, and it's unfortunate because it was just moving so fast, and you did so much of that stuff that I can't even really tell. I've probably forgotten more of those stories than I actually remember. But it was things like that. It was that brand voice. It was that thing where we were trying to tell a story about, like, we're interested in the things that you are. Like, if you're interested in this stuff, follow us. And our demo was so split amongst male and female. Like, we were like one of the one of the biggest sports pages. Well, we were the biggest sports page in Houston, but we were just one of the biggest pages in Houston, period. and our male to female was almost split right down the middle because we leaned into what was interesting, not necessarily just what was sports.
Yes, I say this all the time. Be interested as a brand, be interested versus interesting. It's not about trying to be the cool brand. But I'm really question talking about this, what unhinged marketing looks like these days or now. And I question, is unhinged a way a tactic to get that attention in the way that we consume social? Because I just saw a headline yesterday around Long John Silver. Is it Silver or Silvers?
Silver. Yep.
So yes,
Yeah, it's been
changing.
a hot second since I've been there.
Yes, I didn't even know they were still around.
Yep.
And they changed their logo, and people are having the same similar visceral reaction to Cracker Barrel. And now they're back in the news for their marketing efforts.
Yeah, well, and they were in the news. It was a few months back because they had been bought by private equity, and then they had kind of looted basically the cash reserves. They sold off the land and things like that. So they're not necessarily in the news for any good reasons. I don't know if that's going to motivate anyone to go try a Long John Silver or whatnot. But I'd say when I think of unhinged marketing, we talk about like how back in the day. And I hate saying that, but like how, the early versions of social media, we didn't even really think about having people who were dedicated to do that part of the job. Now there are people that don't work for anyone who their only job is social media, whether it's AI slop or just aggregating or whatever the case is. So yes, I think the attention economy that we operate within now is based on the more outlandish and off-putting you get rewarded for it. And I think that's one of the unfortunate byproducts of where we're at right now with just media in general.
And what we find, Brandon, because Justin and I, we talk to marketing teams all the time, and I can sense it because when I have like this spidey sense sometimes of really ambitious like social media marketing coordinator, someone's in the room, like that person's got an idea. I know they got an idea. So I need to say in front of their VP, their chief marketing officer, I need to be like, that person's work really good. And they need to hear it in front of everyone. And I need to be loud about it. I make sure that I do that. Sometimes because I know there's more there, but they need permission to be a little unhinged, to take a risk. They need someone to tell them constantly to do it. So like right now I think about like what is unhinged that works. Like the staple was Duolingo. Now Duolingo is definitely unhinged for 2025. I would say that is what social media branding was in 2015, but now with a paid element, because everything feels organic, feels fun nature. They talk to people, like they're always in their community and feel real. And I'm very familiar with just following them from a start. A story I just told on my LinkedIn today. I actually ran into their now former social media manager, now director of social at DoorDash, Zaria. I ran into her at the airport 2 days ago at 6:30 in the morning. I was like starstruck. I was like, this is like, she's like me like 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and I'm like starstruck by her because I almost like want permission to find that in me again, because that still exists in me a little bit, but it's like buried because we don't have permission to like do this kind of stuff anymore. And what I found so fascinating about Duolingo is I looked at their content, Super Bowl commercials, day-to-day social everything. This is someone that was a student of 2014 social media and went into that room and be like, we give ourselves permission to do it again. And I find that so interesting. So I think of like what we call risky now. Like, I just think if you replayed the playbook, like if I went and replayed ESPN 97.5's playbook on some sort of brand page and adapted it, I think it would pop. But do brands allow that anymore? That's what's hard to find.
They didn't allow it when we did it.
That's true.
Yeah, we just did it. And I would say like they didn't understand. Legacy corporate media didn't understand social media then, they still don't understand it now. And that's the unfortunate part about the landscape of media, because you look around and there's so many big media companies, but how many of them are financially healthy? Almost none. Like most media companies are struggling monetarily, and it's because almost every single one of them were legacy companies that struggled mightily to convert what they were into what they need to be, like to make that evolution from being a legacy platform into being a digital platform, and being able to effectively reach audience, effectively aggregate audience. And so now you have this reconsolidation that's happening, where it's like you had everyone split out, like especially streaming services. That's the thing that comes to mind is streaming services. So they start out with all these cable networks. They've got content that they're producing, so they create their own streaming platforms. But then they can't reach critical mass or monetize them enough alone. So what do? Fold into one another. Fold in, fold in, fold in, fold in. And so now we're reaching a point to where the trajectory we're headed looks like what media looked like in maybe the 50s and 60s, where there were four or maybe three or four major networks where you got content from, like that were just TV companies or radio companies. And we're headed back towards that, where everything is just folding back into, these three or four major companies that will control all the media, but they're only going to win off of aggregating. They're not effective at actually marketing and bringing and building audiences themselves. So everything is just so niche. It's like, oh, I like this show over here. Oh, I like this show over here. Oh, I like this show. I mean, I hear all the time people say Apple has the best shows. I've seen Severance, and that's about it. Like I haven't seen anything else on there. But that goes back to the other point, which was your question about podcasts, which was what happens next? Like, what's the next iteration of it? I think there's streaming media is going to hit that same major question with them as well, which is what happens when you're oversaturated? What happens when there's too many shows to stream? What happens when there's just not enough bandwidth to watch shows? And I think that probably goes, that's a giant question that industry is going to have to answer. And the reckoning of that's coming soon, I think.
Brandon, do you have any tips for these media companies on where to start to get a better understanding of what is needed in order to transform in the way that they need to transform?
I think so what we always went by was engagement and response. Like, is what we're doing actually moving people? Like, are they wanting to join what we're doing? And then let the monetization aspect of it take care of itself. That was the second part was always an issue, because we were always reliant upon other people to figure that part of it out. But we never really had problems with the first part, which was just like letting, like, you talked about giving people permission, to have their voice. I always think about it from a standpoint of not just giving them permission, but being okay with failing. Like my golf instructor has this thing where he says, every bad swing contains good information. And so if you're like, golf is so hard. I don't know if either of you play, but it's a really hard, frustrating sport. And so if you put the ball down and you whack it and you shank the ball, if you just repeat that and you just take the ball down and just do, you're never going to learn. You don't understand. If you don't take inventory of what just happened, why did I shank it? What was it that I did that led to that result? If you're just trying to just hit the ball, then not only are you not going to learn, but you're actually going to instill some bad habits, because you're going to keep doing it the wrong way because you're not learning from that. And so I think being okay with failing, as long as you're learning something from it, let your failures inform your decision making going forward, because there's nothing wrong with failing. I tell people all the time, anything that I've accomplished has been from trial and error with an emphasis on error. And so I think from a media standpoint, I don't know if there's any like good answers outside of, I think you really have to do what gets a response from your audience, like find things that move them and speak to them in a way that's outside of just what your product is, but like reaches them as people and like motivate, because that's really what are we talking about? What do we call it now? Vibes. Like vibes, like we respond to vibes. And so I think that's what so many media companies are just putting out bad vibes right now. Like, be relatable, like show people that you are on their side. I can't tell you how many companies I'm actively watching do the absolute antithesis of that right now, which is like ignoring their audiences, like doing things for the sake of a bottom dollar instead of actually like building community. It's really frustrating.
And that's one of the things I think about, like what the big change is for me in my career, like what has changed, like where I can do X and Y, but now it's a little more tentative to do X and Y, is when marketing started getting expected to close the deal. Like I think at the beginning, social media was to give you the opportunity to pass the baton, to be financially successful. We're going to give you a very loyal audience that craves your product. Once money started getting poured into this engine, I see it where marketers at some point had to almost learn sales acumen too. Like you're also closing the deal. We're putting all these thousands of dollars. You have your own salary. You're no longer someone who has this creative marketing style background. You're also someone that's supposed to have a sales background. I think that snuck up on a lot of people and it froze a lot of people. And that's something that, you know, it's still something I'm evolving with today. But Brandon, I know we're right at the end of time, so I'm going to leave you with this question as we wrap up here. So right now, young person, we're talking a lot about media companies, we're talking social, we're talking video delivery. We didn't even get deep into TikTok today, which we always have lots of thoughts on our platform, our side platform there. Tell me, what do you think? Someone that's trying to like make a name for themselves, get more seen, do something like we did back in the day, but they're 23 right now and just looking for a shot. What should they be learning to try to inject themselves in these companies and be useful?
I'd see, you know, it's funny, like to hear, like, what would you tell someone that's young in their career? It's like, I feel like we're all trying to chase that same thing, which is like trying to figure out, like, how do we set ourselves apart? How do we learn more about the things that we're doing? How do we try to be that well-rounded Swiss Army knife? And I think, you know, it starts with being curious. We should always be curious. When I do talk to people who are young in their career, I try to say, the mantra that has worked for me, which is don't be afraid to try things, don't be afraid to fail, and let failure inform you, like the things that we just talked about. And for all those reasons, because you're going to fail. The question is, how much do you learn from that? And then how do you like use that to build upon what your decision-making process and to be better? If you are investing your time and efforts into things that you're genuinely interested in, I always feel like the rest will fall into place, because we should naturally be curious about the things that we're doing. But you're not going to do that if you just have a job for a job. Like, and if you're doing a job for a job, there's fine, but there is certainly, I think there's a price to pay that, like from a psychological standpoint, because I think you get worn down, you get in this rut. Whereas, what I do during my day job is I do video production. When I go home and I'm doing my other podcasts, what am I doing? Video production. It's because that's the thing that I'm interested in. And I do it regardless of whether I'm getting paid here to do it or whether I'm doing it for myself or whatever the case is. Like, I'm interested in those things. And when I left corporate media, what did I take with me? Podcasting, because that was the thing that I was genuinely interested in. That was a thing that I genuinely had interest in. It's a thing that I pursued professionally, like as far as building up that network of podcasts that, we built back in the day. I was just genuinely interested from the very first time that I walked into a radio station and said, this is what I want to do. For me, that drive and the fire comes from having genuine interest in what I'm doing. And I would just say to anyone, whether they're young in their career or looking to make a change, which is let your passion be your North Star, and everything after that will fall into place. But you also like have to give yourself permission to pursue it. And I think a lot of people, myself included, I looked at my parents, and my parents really never pursued anything that was outside of their comfort zone. And, like my mom started at a temp agency and worked for an oil and gas company for her entire career, made a lot of money, retired, very comfortably, but never really like wasn't passionate for it. And there wasn't really anything else. Like for me, if I'm going to go spend someplace and be there 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, or if I'm at work from home and I'm doing it, 8 hours a day or whatever the case is, I want to know that I'm doing something that I care about, because at the end of the day, like you're doing that thing, you're going to spend the majority of your time doing that thing. You owe it to yourself to at least be interested in it.
And there you have it, Jess. You see where my vibes come from? There's like things Brandon literally said that I almost say word for word now. So where do you think I get it from?
Well, Andy, you have had some incredible leaders leading you, and Brandon is absolutely one of them. I can already tell. Never worked with Brandon, but I can tell, and we could talk to you all day long.
Yes. This is the kind of conversations we used to have all the time, around like venting about Astros baseball. But, we always got to a conclusion, always felt motivated. And Brandon, huge thank you for coming on, but even bigger thank you for the lessons that you've instilled in me, to our listeners today. And, definitely wouldn't have made this career what it is without you. It's the butterfly effect I always talk about, like finding those right pieces. It's what made me like interested in social, interested to do these marketing things. Like I knew that I was interested, but I didn't know that I wanted that to be the 8 to 9 hours of my day. So you got that out of me, and forever thankful.
Man, I appreciate you having me on. I'll speak to anyone who will listen to me about it. You were you always give me so much credit, but I think all I did was just give you the opportunity and let you just go wild on it. And you made me look great by doing that. And so I appreciate everything that you contributed and everything we did together. We could just talk for like if you kept this rolling, we could talk for 4 hours of stories. But yeah, for sure. But because we're both long-winded. But I appreciate, I value having worked with you, brother, and I'm so happy and proud for all the success that you've been able to accomplish.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon, Brandon.
All right, talk to you soon. Good to meet you, Jess.
Bye.
So, Jess, another wonderful segment on our Bosses series, and how I ended it right there. Brandon was talking about North Stars. That's one I think you hear me talk about, like when we work with different clients, like what is your North Star, or what are you trying to get to? And I've heard that from a lot of different leaders too. So it's actually something that I talked about when I was younger. I learned from Brandon, but I didn't really bring it into my talk track maybe the last couple of years. And I think that was a big one. And again, like he said, just the permission, like be able to do stuff. That is, I think, one of the most important things from a direct boss, but also just from our industry in general. Are you getting that? And, to have that so early in my career, it was able to allow me to utilize these skills as we continued on.
Yes, the permission to fail, the permission to take those risks, and as Brandon said, using it as a learning opportunity, absolutely incredible. I really hope to see more of that type of behavior out of people, and really using your personal passions and connecting them to your career aspirations. So seeing more of that connection and seeing more how the personal comes into your everyday work life.
And you've been doing that. Like we had a group session yesterday where you were talking about some of the stuff you do, where you do teaching at the D school. So, I enjoy hearing that from you because there's a lot of different thought processes that come through there. But, I think it's we talk a lot about social media, both on this show, but in today's podcast. A lot of it's social, it's community building, it's listening. You want to know either who this person or who this brand is when they're not doing their core thing, like selling to you. So I think so much of that, though, is also the dimension of how we work together. And once you start to establish who that person is, what drives them, Brandon hits on a really key point, is you're able to now sell through ideas a lot easier. And I think that the speed at which we work, if we can slow down to do that, that unlocks so many things that follow.
Bringing your story to life on the social stage is so key, and that's what we all crave, and that's how we get bought in. So I absolutely agree, and I think we need to get back to like those OG roots and really focusing on like how can you visualize that story, how can you bring it to life. Like if I can't have a one-on-one conversation with Brandon yet, like how do I know what Brandon is all about, what his values and beliefs are? And doing that, telling your story through social, is a way to do that at scale.
Yeah. And then sometimes you find people have a lot more in common than you think. Like if it's this person from afar, this leader from afar, like, can you have that conversation with them every day? Like, of course, not, it could be hard to like get that type of access, but can you at a certain period or make the extra time or just ask? Like, there's no penalty for doing so. And I think that trying to find those common grounds is important because, I was talking to a senior leader yesterday actually, and found out a lot of stuff that we liked is very similar. Baseball, like teams we rooted for, fantasy football comes up. Like that's stuff that Brandon and I did really early on, but it's just naturally being curious, which is a big topic. And I think that if you actually instill that into your daily like marketing life, it will also show in the marketing output that you do, which again, we're going old school. And again, I find Duolingo to be very old school social media. That's usually what they're interested in. They're trying to create some sort of conversation that they're going to be a part of on a daily basis. Now, how risky or not risky you go, it's purely up to your brand. Everybody's got a different idea about that, but it's more about the engagement and talking to each other piece that I think is important.
What I also loved about Brandon's perspective is he seems very open to wanting to speak with others, to wanting to learn from others, that curiosity. So I think again he's giving all of us permission to reach out and bounce ideas and learn from you're in that type arming others and helping people put their guard down so they do feel comfortable in approaching.
And I think for the leaders that are listening to this, are you doing that on an active basis? There's a lot of things that are happening, return on investment, making sales, hitting quotas, like that's the game above all and everything. But are you putting your people that you manage in a position to where they're going to be energized to keep doing so? Like I have this debate a lot that if you aren't, you need to start, obviously, that's the first step. But if you aren't, then you get in this cycle of having to replace people all the time. So it's like, if you're building your people up, sure, some may stay for a year or two and leave and go on to something better. There's others that are going to stick around for a long period. There's others that are going to want your job once you take a higher job. The way for you to take a higher job is have a team that works with you, builds a unit, builds consistency, and builds you up. So there's like this natural vibe that has to all work together in a marketing room. And I think that's why management is so tough. Brandon hits on this, is that you are going to have people with different goals. Like some of them, their goal is going to be they want to work up to this level. Some of them, their goal is they're going to want to do really good work and passionate work for 8 hours and be good with it. For others, like they want to add new things to their job. They want to generalize in more concepts. You can't say yes to everything, but you can't say no to everything either. So you got to really know who you're hiring and how to build what they're looking for.
Yes, I always think of improv and acting, and try a day where you literally cannot say no to anyone.
See what happens. That's like the Jim Carrey movie, right? You know what I'm talking about, where he says yes to everything?
Yes, man.
Yes.
I never saw it, but I know what you're talking about.
It's ridiculous. So, it's an actual movie. Someone came up with that concept. But Jess, we do have to close out on kind of finishing what we started on earlier. And that was your Disney vacation. So we come back to this a lot because for those of us that may be listening to this episode for the first time, again, her family is huge into Disneyland, made several trips, did surprise trips, and the social media is coming at you now. It's not just Disney, but I think you also get hit with the influencers on YouTube and whatnot. So again, like if I'm Disney's marketing team right now and I'm doing paid and I'm building audiences and I'm trying to get to you, I'm like, she's taking this step with her family of doing the 2-day trip. How do I get her to take the next step and go to Disney World next? So that's like my big question, Jess. Like you said, the kids are a little young still, but you know, is that on the horizon soon? Because that's the big one right there. That's the whole week-long trip that is going to be Disney-esque.
It absolutely is, for sure. One of the reasons why Disneyland is so appealing right now, one, it's smaller, so it's
You can do it in a
easily,
day.
yes, it's accessible,
Yeah.
and you can walk from both parks, and I absolutely love that. There is
No
an experience,
monorail, no
yes,
buses involved. Yeah.
yes, experience level there, that is chef's kiss. Two, the right now the travel, again, it all plays into the overall experience. The travel is so easy right now, and with a 2-year-old, this is about as short of a flight as we possibly can handle.
Yeah.
When they get older and they are better travelers, we are not the type of people that's just going to throw them into it right now at this age and then have them evolve and get better. We want, less stress for ourselves as well. So when they get older, they become better travelers. Of course, we're gonna make the cross country trip to
The world.
to the world. Maybe even Hawaii. I mean, there's an Alani property there that looks very appealing
Yeah, I mean,
without the crowds.
we've just tipped the iceberg. Like,
Yes.
so here's what I don't know if you know this about me. Like, I think the next like thing that they could like start coming at you with our Disney cruises and all that. But I don't know if you know this about me. I will not do a cruise. Like, there's like no
Yes,
circumstance
agreed.
you'll get me on one of those boats. So we're on the same path there.
It is so funny that you bring that up because now that we've been multiple times this year, I've been meeting a lot of people at the park that are major Disney fans,
Yeah.
and they do it all. They go to all the worlds around the globe. They go on these cruises all the time, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you should go on the cruise. You're gonna love it." And we're like, "Nope, hard no. I will never go on a cruise.
Yeah.
You could throw all the marketing at me
It's
that
not
you
gonna work.
want, but it's
Yeah.
never going to happen." And I'm very confident in this decision.
So we'll see how good their audiences are, because now that you put that into the world, maybe you're going to get like an ad that comes, or maybe it'll be smart enough. They'll be like, no, Jess is not for this, but Disney World flight packages are right for her. Like sometimes I'll get some stuff that's out there and I'll be like, oh, we fly direct to this location now. And I'm like, oh, interesting that they figured out that I was like looking at that at one time.
Yep, exactly.
But no, we're on time, right at time here. So Great episode. Once again, thank you, Brandon, for coming on. Another one of my former bosses, Jess. So you get kind of a inside look as to where my philosophies have developed from what unlocked me as a marketer. So huge thank you to having him on. Inspiring as always, and we'll keep that momentum rolling here through October.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.